everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace dropping in on you. Want to talk to you about something that's becoming a increasingly recurring topic of discussion because of the frequency at which it seems to be happening. Some of it is an increase in rate and frequency. Some of it is simply access and exposure created by social media, which puts almost everything in real time. But whatever the situation, it is definitely something that we have a problem with in the Black community. And I think some of the ways that we confront it, some of the ways that we talk about it and deal with it are counterintuitive, counterproductive. And I want to talk about that. This particular situation, and you know the routine. Look, man, we do work in the community, been doing work in the community officially for 20 years. I've been doing work in the community in one way or another for over 30. We need your support. If you believe in the work we're doing and you've watched and you paid attention, you know the work we do on a regular basis. Not a day goes by that I don't get contacted about something that is needed in the community with families, with young Black boys, young Black girls, mass incarceration or something where a person's life is literally impacted and they need services. We need your support. Look, go into the description box, find out how you can give and do so. Moving on. I spoke last week about a young lady by the name of Lauren Smith Fields, young 23-year-old girl out of Bridgeport, Connecticut, who was found dead under suspicious circumstances. And there are a lot of different ancillary topics and indirect infusions into her death. One being that she had just met an older white man on some dating app called Babel, and everything happened except acknowledging that was suspicious and that a young Black girl had died. Everybody was pointing to all the other stuff and all the causalities and all the things that could have prevented it and all of that. And there's a place for that. I believe in accountability. I believe in personal responsibility. I believe in making good decisions. I also believe in acknowledging that there's a disproportionate amount of young Black females who are dying unnecessarily. I believe that we need to look at the number of young Black females that are coming up missing. I think that we need to look at the level of violence and harm that comes to young Black females without it being an opportunity to disregard or to in some way diminish the fact that there is a problem with young men being assaulted and killed as well. We don't have to treat the suffering of our male and female members of our community as being mutually exclusive. To acknowledge that one is under duress does not mean that the other is not. And until we get to that point, we're going to always have a problem because everybody is looking and speaking from a place of defense and malevolence because they believe that one group is being heard or felt and the other is not, or that one group is a part of the problem, and in some instances that is also true. But I'm not here to talk about Lauren right now. I gave my input on that, and I haven't seen a need yet to come back and discuss that particular situation any different. But what I did in almost simultaneously is choose not to address the senseless killing of Atlanta attorney Courtney Cox. I believe Courtney was in her late 20s, budding attorney, working for a prestigious law firm in Atlanta, and was killed by her 6-month boyfriend, somebody she's in a relationship roughly about 6 months or less. Somebody she met in her apartment building. I didn't get all of the details on it, but I got enough to kind of piece things together and know the facts to the point where I can discuss what I need to discuss here based off of what I'm hearing and seeing. And this was prompted by someone literally contacting me directly and asking me what was my take on it. based on how many people with platforms, especially black men with platforms on social media, primarily YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, are framing it. And what did I think about it? And what he did is he shared a few of the links with me. And immediately, the first thing that came to my mind was victim blaming. What is victim blaming? Victim blaming is when someone is in one way or another harmed, whatever it is. Maybe they were taken for $1 million. Maybe they were beaten. Maybe they were raped. In this instance, killed. The large portion of the population starts to point out if they wouldn't have. So instead of acknowledging that somebody violated the most basic of human rights, and that's the right to live, and took her life, it starts to be about what she did to bring it upon herself. And to me, outside of attempting to harm this person in an extreme way, her death is not justified. Her death is not constituted. And in that sense, I think that we have put the cart before the horse. Does this mean that I sit up and I say no? There's no level of accountability necessary, that women can pretty much do what they want to, choose the mates they want to, and so much more. Because one of the people was saying that, well, she got what she deserved. Who chooses a multi-convicted felon as a mate, especially an attorney? And I wonder, when I hear stuff like that, what world are we living in? Because here's the reality. It sounds good. I get it. You know, you choose, and with that comes a certain level of things you should automatically expect, based off of primarily stereotypes, because a lot of what we think about convicted felons is based off a stereotype, because that's not every convicted felon. But here's the thing. When you talk about that, there's the other conversation that is being held simultaneously that calls black women who won't deal with men who have record. And it's significant. We're not talking about just the low down, dirtiest of the low down that don't work, don't do this, don't do. I mean, all the things where you can just look at them and say they're not about anything. But we're talking about men who are really trying to turn their lives around, men who are out trying to work, trying to get it together. And there are women that simply won't date them solely because of the fact that they have a record. Here's the situation, and this is one of the things that a lot of black women have been maligned about, and that's the fact that it's easy for a black man to get a record. If he grew up in the hood, he's been targeted so many times by the time he's out of high school that the chance of him not having some type of arrest record, and in many instances being pushed into, manipulated into, threatened and terrorized into signing over a part of his life for a period of time with the fear of giving up a lot more if he doesn't sign it over, and ends up doing 2 or 3, 4 years, or somewhere along the line, and coming home and trying to get this right, and then facing all of the things that come along with being a convicted felon. And this again isn't giving an excuse to poor behavior. This is talking about how many times in the last 2 months have you read a story where you saw someone spend 23, 25, 35, even 40 years in prison for doing a crime they didn't commit? Well, the first thing somebody pops in is, that's very rare. No, not when you're reading about it every damn day. Now, those are the people who had cases that DNA could refute. What about the cases that DNA will not refute to a indisputable level their guilt, and so they're stuck? What about the people whose crimes aren't so huge that they haven't already did their time, been released, and come home? So what I'm telling you is, there's a large number of people who didn't do it. We heard about the Central Park 5. We've heard about so many different times that it has been. That's the extreme end. I want to talk about, for just a brief moment, that more conservative area where they probably were doing something they weren't supposed to, but it didn't warrant them going to prison. Or they were in the wrong place at the wrong time and they shouldn't have had their ass there, but yet they were, and now they're doing time for something they didn't actually do, but they shouldn't have had their ass there. And then you can go on and on and on about choices. Well, see, there's a flip side of that. We've maligned black women because black women won't give brothers a chance because brothers have made mistakes, and in some instances didn't make a mistake, but will never get a fair shake because their name is on a piece of paper somewhere. And so when a black woman says, okay, I'm going to actually trust my intuition, which could be off in this world because intuition has been inundated and permeated with all kind of interferences where most people's intuition isn't pure. It's heavily influenced by all different types of stimuli that misleads, misguides, and sends you into a situation where you're not prepared to actually properly and effectively use your intuition. Because when intuition is on point, it tells you long before you're ever ready to make the decision what the decision should be. I mean, almost instantaneously. When your intuition is on point, you meet somebody you know. But the problem is we have allowed this entire system to inundate us with ideas and thoughts and processes. We got women out there with checklists. See, it's not about what your intuition tells you anymore. It's about what your checklist tells you. Where he works, what he drives, what he does, how many times he opens the door, how many times he says ma'am, how many times he smiles at you, how fine he is, does he have a six-pack, what type of shoes is he wearing, all of these different things that tell you, oh man, he's a good man. No, you didn't listen to your intuition. And then you didn't do the secondary checks of, forget how he looks, forget where he drives, forget where he lives, what's his vision? How does he generally refer to women when he's speaking of women? All of these different things. So, no, our women aren't probably making the best choices. Here's the problem I have with blaming a woman who was murdered by a person who should have been her protector is, first and foremost, it sends a message to our women that you make the wrong choices on you. Not that we're going to stand up and we are going to create an environment in the community where simply harming black women is unacceptable. As black men, that should be the standard. Look, nobody's saying women are perfect. Black women can be a problem. Trust me, I've had a few. They can be a problem. And when I say problem, I mean a real problem. A problem where if you come from the hood, like I did, if you come from the hood, you got some women out there that'll make you want to hurt them. Just based off of code. They all in a space they have no business being as a female, and they're pushing buttons and playing, and they don't get it. They don't get how you built and how you had to be built to survive in that shit. But you can't be that person. You can't be that dude, because then it stops being about her and it immediately becomes about you. It becomes about what you're capable. It becomes about whether you can control your emotions, which you should be able to do as a man. You should be able to sit up and know when you bounce, when you pounce, when you let it roll. And unfortunately, we don't do that. That's one of the things that we focus on at Black Men Lead, is teaching young boys how to manage their emotions, teaching young boys the importance of being a protector instead of a predator. It is so important. But what we can't do is start creating these justifications by way of default that says, well, she put herself in that situation. Because then we can sit up and say black men put themselves in situations that lead them to prison, and they shouldn't deserve any care, any concern, any level of empathy and understanding and sympathy because of the fact that they should have knew better. Here's my thing. First and foremost, should this young lady probably have vetted this guy better? Without question. Now, does that mean that even if she vetted him, that she wouldn't have still chose him? That doesn't mean that because he went to prison, he can't be a good man? I would have to argue differently. And I would have to argue vigorously that going to prison doesn't make you a bad person. People make mistakes, and black men are targeted at a rate that is just look up the percentage of black men that have had at least one encounter with law enforcement compared to their white counterparts, and see the problem, and see how it can easily end up being a situation in which you get caught up in something that you probably shouldn't be caught up in based off of what you really did or did not do. What am I getting at? What I'm getting at here is this thing isn't a real simple, hey, this is how it is. It's about understanding the dynamic. It's about understanding what's going on socially. It's about understanding how things operate. Number one is, no matter what she did outside of trying to harm him physically, she did not deserve to die. The women that I am seeing killed by their mates or ex-mates did not deserve to die. And there are a couple where the women were actually horrible. They were literally horrible, but they did not deserve to die. And the taking of their life was wrong. But in instances where this person is just trying to be the best they can be, and they get to a point where they are, and for what I understand is at the point he killed her, he didn't break in, she let him in. So right up until the end, she didn't know she was in danger, because he came over and there was no sign of forced entry, and he killed her. And then got into a shootout with law enforcement and ended up dead either by self-inflicted gunshot wound or he was hit by the hail of gunfire coming from the police department. They're still doing an investigation on that. But what we've got to be careful of is using a person's choices to mitigate the wrongs of another person. Should she be more responsible in choosing? Yes. But where do you draw the line? Are you saying that if a man has a record, he's not husband material? Or are we saying that if he has a record, that has to be acknowledged, and you have to give some credence to the fact that he has a record, and that he probably needs to be checked out a little bit more and more diligence? I can tell you that my wife did a background check on me. When we first met, she did a background check on me. I was very open about my past, who I was. But she wanted to check and see, hey, is there anything else that he may not be telling me? And she did a background check on me. And, she let me know she did a background check on me. And I said, hey, that's cool. I'm good. Because if I don't have anything to hide, then there's nothing wrong with that. Now, there would have been a time that I would have said, I'm not really for background checks. And here's why. Because if you do a background check on a person and all you have is what you find in that background, it doesn't necessarily reveal who the person is now. She was doing a background check on me after she had met me, after she had actually worked with me as her therapist, and then found out that I was serious about her a year later. After we had stopped working together, she realized I was serious about her, and she decided to check into me, and see who I was and all of that. But by then she had that, but she had, knowing me and having dealt with me and see how I handled her, how I spoke concerning women, how I referenced to women, what type of relationship I sort of had with my mom. She had an idea of a lot of that stuff. And so she could balance that with anything she may have found that would have said, hey man, this dude may be this, whatever. No, it wasn't anything that she didn't know. She didn't find anything that she didn't know. But still, the thing is, I have no problem with her having done that. The problem is, sometimes you can look up, there was a thing where a guy who I actually worked with came to me, and he was heartbroken because he met this person and they were really popping and, and everything like that. And when it got to a point where he really knew it was serious and she was feeling him and he was feeling her, he told her, hey, look, I'm a convicted felon. I'm no longer on parole. I did my time. I'm out. And he was gainfully employed doing his thing, had moved on, had been a number of years since he had any run-ins with the law. And she immediately dropped him, which is her right. But, it goes to the whole dynamic. It was her right to do so. It was her choice to sit up and say, that's not something I want to deal with. I don't want to be with. But then again, what you have to look at is that disqualifies a number of people. I think are good people and good men. And I know that the media and the system tend to present all convicted felons as thugs and killers. And the truth of the matter is that's not the case. But, you know, one thing that I have to say on the other side of things, when you make a choice to put yourself in that situation, if you actually made a choice to put yourself in that situation, one of the consequences is some people simply will not accept you. Some people are going to reject you solely on your past decisions. And you have to understand that's where you're at. And you've got to learn to live with that, and you got to learn to be okay with who you are and who you are becoming. In the flip side, again, we keep going back and forth. This is because it's a complicated dynamic. When a woman meets a man, she's going off a number of different things. You know, this guy, maybe to her, was attractive. You know, maybe she was one of those people who had a certain lure to a more rugged type male. And there is a natural draw to that. There are some women that are absolutely drawn to a more rugged, masculinely presenting man. And maybe there was a allure to that, maybe a certain level of edge that she got out of that. And maybe if she, and I don't know the whole story, maybe if she hasn't ever been in a situation to really know that side of life, say for instance, if she didn't grow up in the hood, that she doesn't know what comes with that in many instances, or how to be aware of what's the difference between, you know, a roughneck and a killer, or a roughneck and a truly violent individual. There's a difference, you know. The roughneck is the guy that if it's necessary to handle business, will handle business, but that's not his aim. His aim is to be a positive influence in the world, to love his mom, to respect his father, to be a good man to his woman and a father to his children. But if he has to touch you, he will. The killer is a person who is highly volatile, unpredictable, and under the right circumstances will harm you. And you have to be able to know that. But the truth is, very few people do. And they find out too late. And I don't think that's a reason to sit up and throw the ball completely in their court. But I think that we do need to do a better job of choosing. I think we need to do a better job of being aware of who we are, where we are, and who we're dealing with. I think that is immensely important. And what we are caught up in now is this cycle of nobody wants to acknowledge where we're at and how bad it's gotten. And that bothers me. I don't want to see our young women murdered. I don't want to see our young women missing. I don't want to see our young men with callous hearts and such an intense level of apathy and indifference when it comes to our women. I want to see this burning and yearning desire to be a part of one another. And I mean that in a community way, not just a romantic way. I want to be able to say, hey, look, you roll up in a black space, no matter how many black people are in it at any given time, be prepared to meet force if you in any way harm or attempt to harm anyone in that community, male or female, but definitely female and children. That and we're seeing far too many of our youth, our young babies being harmed, often by those who were given the responsibility of caring for them. So there are a lot of things going on, but when it comes down to this particular situation, I think that we have to be real careful in making it the predominant conversation around this young lady's murder be that she was stupid because she chose this particular guy. I think that we definitely do need to push upon our women, especially our younger women, the importance of vetting young men and being able to take the time to discern between the person's representer or the person who they put in front of you to be the initial representation of who they are and who they really are. Because very rarely does a person present authentically initially We all put on our faces and our masks when we want to introduce ourselves initially. We want to present our best selves. And the problem is very few people are operating from their best selves, their best version. And so we need to take time to evaluate that. But we also need to hold killers accountable and be very clear about who's at fault. Now, someone being accountable is not the same as someone being at fault. And we need to understand that, yes, I need to make good choices. But if someone takes my life and I didn't do anything to precipitate that, it's not my fault. It's the person who did it. It's their fault. It's something was wrong with them. And, you know, but it does highlight the fact that we've got to do better at evaluating the people we put ourselves in spaces with. And this isn't just about black women and men. It's about putting ourselves in spaces with people who don't mean us well. On that note, I'm gonna get out of here. I got a couple of things to do before I head to the house, but I wanted to stop by and have that conversation. I hope that I was clear. I know I was all over the place, but you guys who know me know how to interpret that. I think that I made some valid points, and you know, feel free to chime in and weigh in on it. But those are the things that we've got to look at moving forward. Also, like I said, if you believe in the work we do, one of which is Black Men Lead Rite of Passage initiative, which deals with African-American adolescent and young adult male violence. Show some love and show some support, and go to the description box and show your love. On that note, I'm out of here. You guys have an unbelievable day.